Good morning and welcome to the Think React Lead radio show. I'm your host, Dom Fawcett, executive coach and leadership speaker here on Intelligent Talk 960, The Patriot, KKNT. Well, folks, today we are going to talk about leadership, tech, guns, and some good old-fashioned gunslinging a little bit towards the end of the show. I like that. But before we do, there comes a time in every person's life where your habits have to change. And the reason I'm bringing this up, in the rare event that I peruse social media, I'm more of a post and go kind of guy because that's how I get stuff done. And I have to find more interest in my life than I do somebody else's. But I see a lot of people literally pivoting, as they're calling it, because I think that's like the go-to word these days, almost every 30 days, every month. And what it is you're not seeing results in a short period of time. So guess what? You quit. You call it pivoting, you call it tweaking, but what you're doing, you're a tweaker. You're just not sticking to what it is you need to do. And the only reason why you're not, because you don't understand what your habits are. Go to my website, donfawcett.com, click on assessment, take the Habit Finder assessment so you can understand what your areas of opportunities are and the things that, let's call it what it is, you might not be that great at, but it's okay. You don't have to be great at everything. Understand your habits, be very dialed in with your goals, and guess what? There's this word my dad used to say, and I don't even know if it's a real word, but it was stick-to-itiveness. I don't know if it's a real word, but you know what I mean. Stay dialed in on your decision-making, on your habits, and then leadership or your influence. As John Maxwell says, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. You will surpass that 30-day mark, acknowledge your wins, and you'll get to where it is that you are trying to go. I've got Ryan McMillan in the studio today. Now, Ryan McMillan enlisted in the Navy in 2000. As a Navy SEAL, he deployed to Mosul and Baghdad, Iraq, Colombia and Paraguay, as well as working in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Korea, and others. All the fun places. In 2007, he co-founded McMillan Firearms Manufacturing before it was sold in 2013. Ryan is the founder and CEO of Grayboe and Reactor. Grayboe manufactures rifle stocks and accessories for precision rifles, and Reactor is a technology, folks, technology and guns. It's a thing. It's a technology company that computes and delivers real-time shot data to the hunter or marksman. Ryan has a degree in physics, which blew my mind out of the water, and a minor in computational mathematics from Arizona State. Ryan is a happily married individual with 4 amazing children who are homeschooled. Everybody's homeschooled nowadays, right? And where was he is a staunch advocate for individual freedoms, personal responsibility, and specifically speaks on topics pertaining to the Second Amendment. Welcome to the Think React Lead radio show. Thanks for coming in, man. I greatly appreciate that. Folks, and I'm going to start with this real quick, and then I want to jump into what your thoughts are on leadership and perception. Our first interaction was, if I'm not mistaken, in the DMs on Instagram. And I'm only bringing this up to preface the importance of what we post. Your comment was, I've looked at your stuff for a few minutes, and kudos to you, I'm a local guy. Boom, there was the connection. What was it? And I'm not asking for validation, I'm just asking so people can hear the importance of it. What was it, because I'm sure you're busy, you don't reach out to everybody, that caused you, that said, you know what, I'm going to let this guy know that I'm a local guy?
Well, when I saw, when I went through your profile, I saw you speak on leadership. I mean, a lot of people speak on leadership, but that's something that's, dear to my heart. I'm a business owner. I've been in, situations where there's been great leadership. When I started digging into your profile, and I just saw, I think, responsibility and being a responsible individual and taking action to better your life and making this country and this world a better place. I mean, that's what I saw when I went through your profile. And I just, every post I'm looking at it and I'm reading it, because once you kind of get a little glimpse of somebody and it intrigues you, then you start looking more and you dig deeper, like, who is this guy, right? And then, of course, Arizona, I see the background, he's got the desert landscape, like, okay, so that's a double connection there.
Totally.
And then I just spent about 15 minutes on your profile looking and going, man, this is a guy I'd love to connect with. I mean, of course, I thought it was a long shot. You have a big following, and so I just liked your page, and next thing you know, kudos to you, having 85,000 followers on your Instagram. you look at your little, your messages, and you saw that I liked you liked me back. And I said, wow, that's interesting. A guy, who has a real serious following, looks at all that stuff.
You have to.
Like me back.
Right.
So I just okay, it's my opportunity to send a message, say, hey, thanks, I appreciate it. And there you go.
Dude, I greatly appreciate that. The human connection is huge. Speaking on that, you mentioned leadership. You've been a great leader. You've had some successes. You've had some wins. When you think of leadership, given all of your life's experiences, what does leadership mean to you?
Well, one of the things I can talk about is leadership is unique to every individual. That's what I've realized in my life. It's really hard to try to adopt someone else's style of leadership, because what you have to do, what I've done at least in my life, and I guess I can't speak for everyone, but you look at other people and how they lead, and you can take things from them, but you still have to go through the motions. You have to go through an experience being a leader and failing and doing all the stuff that it takes to become a good leader. And more than anything, understand who you are as an individual and how you connect with people and what your strengths are, and then also what your weaknesses are.
Correct.
Because if you have weaknesses, everybody has weaknesses, and you have to make sure that you can either have another support group, other people around you who can pick up on those or take over those weaknesses, or have strengths where your weaknesses are.
Makes sense.
And that's really the sign, I think, of a good leader, is somebody who can do that, who can really recognize their faults, because everybody has them, and figure out how to compensate for that with other leadership around you or other people.
You mentioned understand who you are as a leader. Is there a particular moment that you figured, like you knew in this moment, once it was done, I know who I am as a leader?
I don't think there was a particular moment, but there was definitely a time in which for a long time, I didn't feel comfortable as a leader. A long time. And I was in a leadership position. And I look back and I think that's good, right? Like, you want to have that humility a little bit as a leader. I mean, that's a good thing to have. I was in a leadership position at least for 10, 12 years before I finally felt like that was where I should be.
Okay.
And through those 10 or 12 years where I didn't feel confident, well, I shouldn't say not confident, but I didn't feel like I knew enough. Like, I was still learning, and I was like, how can I be a leader to these people when I feel
cement wasn't dry.
Yeah. And so it's just been actually recently, over the last few years, where I really started feeling confident that I am the subject matter expert. Plus, I've gone through the trials and tribulations of leadership and really capable of leading other people. And it's only been recently until I've realized that. I also realize I still have a long way to go. But now I do feel comfortable in a position to where I'm like, okay, I can lead this group, and I can demand the respect because I have earned it.
That makes sense.
And there's some confidence that goes into that. You have to have partly humility, part confidence, and wrap that up a little bit. The people that you lead have to feel like they're being led by someone who's going to lead them through thick and thin. So that's where that confidence comes in, and the humility comes in when you're dealing directly with maybe your employees or the people that you're leading, and you have to understand them. You have to be sympathetic to them. You have to have some empathy towards them,
right?
And you have to connect with them. So that's where the two come together.
Now, you were a leader in the military, and you did your thing there. Thank you for your service. You got out. When you got out, did you know you wanted to start a company?
No, I mean, it's my family kind of had a family business. And my grandfather started a business in the 70s making rifle stocks. He was the inventor of the composite rifle stock. And I, in the military, used the products, my own family's products. So it was a really cool thing.
How did that So you graduate. You're on your first deployment, or you're there and you're using the stock that your ancestry made. Like, did you have a moment in that? And if you did, how did it feel utilizing the legacy that your grandfather built?
It was really surreal. I mean, there was a couple times. The first time, so the two weapon systems or parts of weapon systems that I used were the TAC 50, which was the 50 cal that SEALs used for a long time, and the other one was a particular stock on a rifle called the Mark 13. The first experience was with the TAC 50, and we were just out on a training, and it's just the first time they take them out to the range and you start shooting them, you're like, this is my family's legacy, and all these guys around me, all the tip of the spear guys using that. I mean, there's something really cool about that. Partly, I was in my early 20s. I probably didn't take it in as much as I should have.
Okay.
But you look back, and it's a pretty significant moment. And then the other time on deployment, I just remember distinctly. We have you have your own little like mobile home thing you live in, and you have your gun. You keep your guns in there, and I was kind of hanging my guns up on the wall for quick access in case you needed it. And I was hanging the Mark 13 up, and I remember just looking at it, going, "Man, that's crazy! I'm here at war." And if you think back to 2004, 2005, we hadn't been at war. I mean, now we've been at war, I guess you could say, for 20 years, and we're still kind of in conflict. But before that, we hadn't been so. I become a SEAL. I'm using my family's legacy products, and it was a cool moment.
That's awesome. Yeah. Awesome. When did you decide to go to school for physics?
Well, it's quite a story. I actually started before I went into the Navy, and got too excited to join the SEAL teams, and only did a part of it, and then finished when I got out. So I finished my degree afterwards. So yeah, I mean, physics is something that I kind of went through some trials and tribulations to get there, because as a young kid, you don't really know. I didn't take any high school physics courses. I was into sports. I played sports. One thing I found out about myself is I liked how I liked learning the nature of things and how things worked at their core. So as I went through that process, I found physics. At the same time I found physics, I also found the SEAL teams, and I had to make a choice, and so I chose the SEAL teams. And then I got out, and then Can we? Yeah, sure.
Okay. Most people have the choice of, do I go left or do I go right? You have a choice between physics and SEAL teams. Like, when did you get to that T intersection, and how did that come about?
Well, maybe like when you're a kid, you're influenced by a lot of stuff, television being one. I mean, the fact is I watched some X-Files when I was a kid, right?
Okay, fair enough.
And I got super into that. And then, so you start exploring different things. You're 18, 19 years old, and you're like, okay, what am I going to do with my life? And I thought, kind of some government employment would be cool, FBI stuff. I just started researching on how to get there.
Okay.
And then it led me to the SEAL thing and physics simultaneously. It just kind of how, those two paths. Okay, I got to get a degree. If I want to be in some government agency, I got to get a degree. So there's a long story to that, but it ended up at physics. But also, I realized too, at the end of the day, I needed some other experience if I wanted to be some kind of, government employee.
X-Files.
Yeah, X-Files.
Right.
So I needed both of those things. So it was just a matter of, as you're young, sometimes you make, those instantaneous decisions, and that's, which is a great thing that people lose when you get older. You overthink some things, but I just made that decision. Like, hey, what's pulling me more right now is becoming a SEAL, and so I did that. And then afterwards, I never lost that drive though to get my degree in physics, because I just absolutely loved it. And even to this day, of all the things I do, even though I don't do physics anymore, of all the things I've ever done, that's probably what I've been the most passionate about. What I should say is it's caught my attention the deepest for the longest, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. Now, Grayboe. When we talk about Grayboe, then go into Reactor. Yeah. Tell me about Grayboe, your company.
We make composite stocks. Well, we make stocks for hunting rifles, sniper rifles, any type of bolt gun, right?
Okay.
So we started out making composites, fiberglass, carbon fiber. We also now do stocks out of aluminum. And so we basically do everything. We from concept, where we think about an idea and have that idea brainstorm, to getting it in SolidWorks, which is a computer program that helps you design, all the way through the machine process and the molding process, and we have our own brand. I mean, we basically do everything, and I love that about that company, because there's nothing that we don't do. We're not just a middleman somewhere. We, from start to finish, from concept to branding, to sales, to manufacturing, we do everything.
Everything's in-house. That's good. And you guys are located here in Arizona.
Yep.
Okay, and real quick as we move forward, what's your website?
Grayboe.com, Grayboe.com.
Yeah. All right, now let's get into the nuts and bolts, pardon the pun, but the tech. So Reactor, from my understanding, is the tech side of weapons. Yeah. What is that? Let's go deep into that.
Okay, so the way I like to connect it is a lot of people have heard, if you're in the firearms community or long-range community, there's a thing called a dope book or a data book or a log book. There's a lot of different names for it, but it's just a way to write down certain things. It's basically what we're doing is taking that log book that you manually have to write and turning it into something electronic that's totally passive. You attach this hardware device to a rifle stock, and it knows when you shot based upon the algorithms that we've designed and the hardware that's in the system. We know exactly when timestamp every shot. You don't have to write it down, nothing. It's the system knows. And then based on that shot and that timestamp of that shot, we can collect all this other information. We can collect different types of telemetry. We can collect different the weather, location, recoil profiles, all kinds of different profiles that give you this snapshot of what happened exactly at the time your rifle fired. And why that's important, and another try to relate this is, when you're running a business or when you're running your finances, you have information, and the best way to run your business or to run your finances is to make sure that you can analyze the data. You have the data to analyze, because if you don't know what you're measuring, how are you going to go anywhere? So that's the key to what we're doing. We're trying to measure each shot so that you can analyze it and get better from shot to shot.
So when you're on the range and somebody says dope your scope, this from what I'm gathering, this machine or this piece of technology, is that what it does for you?
No.
Or is it in addition to?
What we want to do is we want to leave the decision making in the hands of the shooter, right? So what I mean by that is we want to just assist you with real data. We just want to give you the information that's coming off the rifle that you can't get. So for instance, what matters in shooting is like if your rifle is canted one way or the other.
Right.
So cant is like on a kind of a rotisserie. And if you're canted one way or the other, your shot's going to be off. But you can't do that physically. You can't, when you're shooting and trying to measure you just can't, the human can't do it without technology.
Okay.
So that's one instance, one thing that we do. We do inclination, so if you're shooting uphill or downhill, or we do also your bearing, so that compass direction. So all that matters, and when you get into long-range shooting and accuracy, all that matters a lot because there's certain effects. One effect we call spin drift. The fact that the bullet's spinning makes it move. It doesn't go exactly straight. So
that makes sense.
Those are things that in the ballistics world, that's what we're trying to bring together so the shooter has the most information so he can make the best decision on his shots.
In short, before we go to our next break, is this something you came up with, and where were you when it was just a thought? Like before all of the on paper, the computers, it was like, wow, this is a good idea.
Well, the cool part about it is, I've been in this industry for a long time, but I became good friends with somebody from my physics, right? So
6 degrees of separation there.
And we just started brainstorming. I'm like, hey, the industry could really use this. Not only was he physics like I was, but he had 13 years at the time, now more, of coding. He's now spent a lot of time in San Francisco doing it. He's a very talented.
He's that guy.
He's the guy who do it all. So he's the guy who really puts the tech the software and the coding together.
I like it.
And I'm the guy who knows what the guys need, what the industry needs, what the industry wants, and we kind of play that as a team.
That's a beautiful marriage right there. Well, all right, we're back in studio with Ryan McMillan, and I'm not even going to lie, half the stuff he talked about as it relates to trajectory and all the tech behind, long-range shooting, way over my head. But you simplified it, and I could imagine that you simplified it from the standpoint of, from the first conversation you had with your classmate, you met him in physics?
Yeah.
In physics, to now, there's been a lot of simplifying.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So now when who purchases your product more often? Is it the hunter? Is it the marksman? What types of audience do you have for that?
The Reactor product, most of the people who purchase that are your competition shooters. There's a whole segment of people out there who are competition shooters, and it's not like the old style competitions where you sit at a bench and you're shooting 1,000 yards and it's totally static. We have total dynamic competitions now, and there's a whole industry being built around that. So, and there's also a whole industry being built around this extreme long range shooting. So there's a thing called the King of 2 Mile, but that's almost even becoming irrelevant because people are shooting even farther than 2 miles now. So it's crazy what people are trying to do with ballistics. So these are the type of these are the type of people that really benefit from the details of each shot.
2 mile shot.
2 mile shots.
So 2 mile shots in the competition world, is that something that happens on deployment? Is that a
Sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, now I can't remember off the top of my head what the longest shot is, but for a while, my company, McMillan Firearms, had held that longest shot at 2,340 meters. It's since been broken. I can't even remember how long, but by a few hundred meters. But yeah, people are shooting, and even in combat, 1.5 miles to approaching 2 miles.
So just before we get into more of your company, to get to the point to shoot in combat 1.5 miles out, how many rounds do you think that person has sent down range, or how long has the training been? Because you don't just wake up and do that.
Of course not. I mean, being a sniper or a marksman or a shooter, a long-range shooter, is an art form. It's a science and an art, for sure. So there's a lot of science behind it. We're trying to bring as much science as possible. But there's just things about it that you have to have experience. You can't go out there and expect to have all the gadgets and stuff and just be able to hit something on the first try. You really have to go out there and practice. So thousands of rounds. I mean, we would shoot, when I was in, we would shoot thousands of rounds every time we went out.
Okay.
So, and this happened over and over and over. And obviously, the more experienced snipers, the longer you've been in, the more training you've done. Those are the ones who really end up, becoming really great at their craft.
Got it. That makes sense. Now, if in your business, if you were to pick something that you attribute to your success outside of the military, something you picked up during your time as a SEAL, what do you think it would be?
Well, I don't know if I can pinpoint it. What I can say is that the older I get and the more I look back at SEAL training, BUDS itself, I realize how important that was. The SEAL experience of combat and stuff, that was great, but it was the transition from being a boy, really, from being a not responsible individual to that 6-month time frame. Well, it's 26 weeks, and I ended up being there for longer, but that time frame really changes you. It really changes you for the better, and it teaches you so much about who you are. And again, like I said before, you're young, you don't get it then. You're just going through the motions, you're just trying to make it through. You're motivated by, sometimes it's kind of like this naive desire to be something great, but you don't really know why. Then when you get older, you kind of analyze what was going on back then. And there's no doubt that SEAL training, the older I get, the more I realize how valuable it was to me, and I think to everybody that goes through it, just in general. And there's some specific things, if you'd like to talk about it, we can. But there's some specific things in SEAL training that I think separate why SEALs are SEALs other than other maybe groups.
We've got one in the building, folks. If you're just tuning in, Navy SEAL Ryan McMillan. Ryan, right before we went to break, you were talking about the moment where you just kind of realized, like, this is it. This is what separates, let's just say you, from majority of the population. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I think most people, when they think of BUDS, if you've heard of SEAL training or heard of BUDS, they talk about Hell Week. Hell Week's the big thing, right? It's where you're up for 5 days and you run the equivalent of 150 to 200 miles in those 5 days. You don't get any sleep, and that is really what the kind of the sexy thing is. All the programs that have been done about SEAL training or BUDS talk about that and spend a lot of time on that. One of the things that I realized looking back at it is, as humans, we're designed to take a lot of pain, or our body can take a lot.
Correct.
It can really take a lot. And I think, every human, to a certain degree, is capable of withstanding a certain amount of pain. What is really out of our comfort zone is some of the things that we did underwater. That is not a place where humans like to be. And
not at all.
And that is the real difference as I look at it. Ranger training, SF training, it's all very difficult stuff, and most of it's done on the land, and they push you on the land aspect and all the running and the swimming. But when you get underwater, that changes everything, because that is a place that humans are not. It's just, we're not designed
panic
for. Yeah,
exactly.
And they teach you to stay calm, and that's the biggest thing. You have to stay calm when you are stressed out. When you are in an environment that is totally outside of your norm and outside of the world that you know, you have to remain calm, and you have to be able to put everything else aside and be able to complete tasks in extreme stress. That's where I think the difference is, and that's not the difference between maybe SEALs and other groups, but also it helps you in life. It helps you overcome fear, anxiety, all the things that I think especially when you're trying to be a professional in this world, that come with the territory. So I think that's really what separates. And I don't think it gets talked about enough when I hear other SEALs speak about it, because most of the time people want to talk about Hell Week and that,
right.
Oh, I went through 5, but no. The most important, the most difficult, the most life-changing experiences in SEAL training are the ones where you are extremely stressed out underwater, holding your breath, and that's where the magic happens.
You've probably not been asked this question. The moments underwater separates the men from the boys. You find another level of patience that you're able to withstand as a human being. You're married. You have kids. How has that moment translated into being a husband and being a father?
Well, you definitely are able to take difficult situations and turn them into something that's, you can calm yourself.
Right.
I actually came from a home where my father was a pretty angry guy. And so you would think that might transition, and I had some of those tendencies.
Correct.
But SEAL training and SEALs and the SEAL teams in general, they rip that out of you. You can't have that. You can't do that. You have to be calm, and you have to remain focused in extreme environments. And that's the difference, and that's what saves your life. At the end of the day, there's no wonder why they set buds up and SEAL training up the way they do. Because if you can't remain calm when you're getting shot at, you're going to die, and you're going to cause your buddies to die. And so just because we did those things underwater doesn't mean that that's specifically for underwater missions only.
Right.
That's for life. That's for mindset, right?
It is. And let's talk about, I'm sure people want to know, give us a deployment story.
Oh, gosh. Well, I guess the most...
that you can talk about.
No. When we the first deployment I did was the best one. It was the best of the two. It was right when we went to Iraq. We may have been the first SEAL team after the insurgency in Iraq, and we were able to just kind of create our own system where we had intelligence. We acted on the intelligence, and we went out and we got a bunch of bad guys, basically.
I like it.
And we were able to act on that intelligence. We were able to do it quickly. And it was this great, op tempo, and we were able to really take a city of 2 million, I think, at the time, and calm it down. It was crazy.
How many of you were there?
There was 32 SEALs, and we had some support, maybe 50 of us total. And over about a 2-month period, what we found was when we would go out in the beginning, we would be getting every house that we would go to, we would take someone off target, and bad guys off target. And as we got towards the end, we found that no one was there because they knew we were there, and we knew we were coming to get people, and they bailed, and the city calmed down. And unfortunately, and in a way, fortunately, we ended up getting called to Baghdad halfway through our deployment, because that was the time when they were transitioning power from the United States back to Iraq. In 2004, they had appointed, I don't know exactly the democratic term for it, but they appointed an Iraqi president at the time, and then within 2 days he was assassinated because they allowed him to have his own security detail. So within 2 days he was assassinated. So they said, okay, we can't have, Americans basically said, we can't have that again. So they pulled us from Mosul, sent us down to Baghdad, and we protected Alawi, who is, I think he's technically known as the first prime minister, president, I can't remember the official term. Anyway, we protected him for about 4 or 5 months. At that time, by far, he was the most wanted individual on the planet. So they needed somebody, some group with experience and that type of mentality to protect him. So we went from totally being on the offense for the first 3 months to totally being on the defense. for the next one is a total mind shift, right? And that's the way you got to be able to do it. We're going in and getting people on the first 3 months, and now we've got to protect someone where people are trying to get us.
That makes sense.
And we didn't like that, but
I didn't spend all this time in training to do this.
Not once in our training did we ever practice security detail.
Right.
We had to learn it when we got there, but because SEALs, they call us jack of all trades, master of none. We have to be able to adapt to that situation, and we did. We had some leadership who in 15, 20 years ago, they did some PSD, personal security detail, and they taught us on the fly, the people who had never done it. So that's what it came down to. So that's not an individual story, but that's a general story.
No, it's high level, but it works. People are. I'm able to understand it. And now, as we wrap up, how does any person, or did you ever struggle with transitioning from all that intensity to, now you got to go pick up mayonnaise at Fry's?
At the time, I would say I didn't struggle.
Okay.
But looking back, there was some struggle. I mean, it was less of a struggle and more of having to adapt back to a society in which you realize that there was a lot of people who didn't care the way you cared about things. So when you're in the SEAL teams, everybody has to go through hell to get there, and that means everybody's dedicated to the same mission, and you can count on everybody. When you get out, you have to realize that not everybody has the same mentality, and that can be
like, why are you late?
It's not hard. It's not hard to be on time.
Exactly.
And I don't know. I still don't know exactly how to deal with it. But you just learn that people are different, and you try to collect the people that you can in your life that think like you and that are motivated. Again, exactly why I spent 15 minutes on your site, because I'm like, there's not very many people out there, as you start to understand the world, there's not very many people that are really driven and motivated to be successful in their life and to be a positive influence in this world and to do positive things for this country. I want to be associated with those people. That's just who I am. That's who I started life being as a professional. And, of course, we have to deal with there's a lot of people we have to deal with, and we deal with them in a professional manner. But I want to be more closely associated to people who are driven.
I think our society looks at people. I'm going to say us. We are not in the same vein, folks. And this is not for Ryan, because he doesn't care if I say us, but I'm not trying to put myself in that same bucket. But there's this certain mindset towards work ethic. And people that have it don't think anything of it. It's very normal. But people outside looking in say, wow, like, what keeps you motivated? And somebody asked me that question, and somebody asked me to ask you that question. And I'm not going to ask you the question because it's not motivation. It's I don't have a choice. It's like, one, you have a legacy that you have to continue on. Like, you don't want to be the guy that drops the ball on that. And as in closing, are you doing this for your children?
Of course.
Right.
I mean, that's the obvious.
Do they want to do it?
Well, I would say this, that I'm not doing the businesses for my children because I want to hand it down to them.
Okay.
I want to be the example for them. If they want the business, then that we can talk about that later. But I'm doing it to set the example.
Got it. That makes sense.
But there's another thing that I think is interesting. A lot of the motivation is just built in. But so I think some of the most successful people, if they don't keep busy, they get into the wrong things. And you can see that with kids too. You gotta keep busy, otherwise you go in the wrong direction. And that's the fine line between, people who are successful and motivated and the people who go the wrong direction and become destructive. And I think those can be the same people. It's just how how your mindset's directed. And I think a lot of us get lucky in the early years, military people, we know how to focus our energy. And some people don't ever learn that.
Right. And I think it's, you make a valid point, and I know, specific to, if we don't keep one foot in front of the other, keep on moving, the moment we stop, I know for me, I will have the tendency to go back into the person that I don't want to be. So I go. So 4 hours of sleep, 3 hours of sleep, it's a thing. But then as I get older, I realize, you know what? Some of the people that are more calm in my life, I get what they're saying now. I do need to kind of tactfully slow some things down. Have you ever been told to slow some things down? And if so, what have you slowed down?
Sure. Yes, I've been told to slow down. I don't know. I just keep speeding up, and I agree with you, except for the fact of if you're going to slow down and the extra time you end up having is going to be turned into destructive things. I mean, there's and I'm not sure I'm at the point in my life where, I feel comfortable slowing down. I mean, I have a lot to accomplish. That's the way I feel. I try to give everything I have to my family. I try to give everything I have to my business, and every waking moment of my life, I'm trying to just be somebody and be something, a positive influence on this world.
Do you think that I know for me, the amount of death that I've seen and understanding how fragile human life is causes you to move at the high speed pace that you're operating at because you understand you could be here and then be gone in a second?
I think that's part of it for sure. I think also you get into your body is a creature of habits, and when you get in the habit of moving fast, you don't know how to move slow anymore, even if you wanted to.
Right.
I think you just create these habits of forward motion that it's almost like a train that you can't stop in a lot of ways, that you really have to focus on stopping if you want to stop it. And when you do stop it, or when you slow it down, you have to be really ready for what you're going to get. And if you're not ready for that, you may end up becoming more destructive than just keeping on that same path of just keeping busy and just trying to be, I don't know if, stopping and smelling the roses, for some people that's good, for some people it's not, I mean, my roses are, in the things in front of me, the things that I can do and accomplish and hopefully make some people's lives better, my kids and my family, sense.
I like
that's what I think that's what I have to give. I don't know if I have to give that slow down mentality and real
sit on the porch, hang out on the rocking chair with the cigar and watch the grass grow. I'd go crazy if I had to do that. Well, Ryan, I just want to say thank you very much for coming out and hanging out with us here on the Think React Lead radio show. Appreciate that. Thank you for your service. And folks, this is a wrap. Ryan McMillan, you can find him on Instagram. You see him on my Instagram. I will post the information there. And this is the Think React Lead radio show. I'm your host, Dom Fawcett. You guys have a fantastic week, and we'll see you on the other side.